Hey there. Have you ever felt like you were living in a world where you couldn't express your emotions freely? Like you were always being judged or punished for speaking up? If you grew up with a toxic mother, you may know exactly what I'm talking about. Growing up with a toxic mother can have a profound impact on our ability to express our emotions. For me, it was like living in a constant state of fear and confusion. I never knew what kind of reaction I would get from my mother, so I learned to keep my feelings bottled up inside. This led to a lot of internal struggles. I often felt like I was walking on eggshells, afraid to say or do anything that might upset my mother. And when I did try to express my emotions, I was often met with criticism, judgment, or indifference. When are you going to stop complaining? I feel like I'm always having to listen to what's difficult for you. I work my ass off for you and still nothing works for you. If any of this sounds familiar to you, know that you are not alone. It's not your fault that you struggle with expressing your emotions, but it's important to recognize the impact that toxic parenting can have on our emotional development. Remember, healing is possible. Do you ever feel like you're missing the emotional gene? Like everyone else seems to be fluent in the language of feelings, but you're stuck in silence? If you had a toxic mother who discouraged you from expressing your emotions, you may be struggling to identify and communicate how you feel. It's like you've got a whole ocean of emotions inside you, but you're stuck with a teaspoon to express them. I remember when I was a teenager and I had my first big breakup. I was devastated and didn't know how to cope with my emotions, so I went to my mother for comfort. But instead of offering me a shoulder to cry on, she told me to stop being so dramatic and that I should just get over it. I was shocked and hurt. It felt like she didn't care about my feelings at all. It's heartbreaking to think about how, as a child, you were never able to confide in your own mother. You were taught from a young age that your feelings, doubts, and insecurities didn't matter, that they were simply clichés that didn't deserve attention. Do these sound familiar? Stop crying over a breakup and chasing after boys. Your main focus should be on your studies. When I talked to her about my disagreements with my friends, she gave me a similar response. She told me, "You shouldn't worry so much about your friends. You should focus on studies instead." Her dismissive response only made you feel worse. It was as if she didn't understand that having meaningful social connections was a critical part of your development from a young age. The sad truth is that every time you turned to her for emotional support, you were met with the same answers. It was always about studying harder, achieving more, and ignoring your feelings. It's no wonder you stopped trying to confide in her altogether. Looking back, I can see that my mother wasn't able to provide me with the emotional support that I needed. It wasn't my fault. It was because of her own shortcomings as a parent. But now it's time for me to start the healing process and move forward. I deserve to find the support and love that I need and deserve. From that moment on, I learned to keep my emotions hidden from my mother. I didn't want to be vulnerable in front of her and risk being brushed off or criticized again. So I started to suppress my feelings and put up a wall between us. It became my default mode of operation. Hide my emotions, don't let her in. At the time, I didn't realize that what I did was the worst thing I could have done. I was just a little kid after all. Even though it was an automatic response, it seemed like the best thing to do at the time. But little did I know, this pattern of repressing my emotions would follow me into adulthood. I found it difficult to express myself to others, not just my mother. It felt like my emotions were trapped inside me and I couldn't let them out. I didn't want to burden anyone with my feelings, and I didn't want to risk being rejected or judged. It wasn't until later on in life that I realized how much this had impacted me. My struggle with emotional expression had affected my personal life and my relationships. It had even affected my own mental health. I never thought that something as seemingly insignificant as my mother brushing off my feelings would have such a profound impact on my life. But it did. A toxic mother can have a significant impact on a child's ability to express their emotions. Maybe you were told that your feelings were wrong, or that you shouldn't be upset about something that really mattered to you. Or maybe you were constantly criticized for being too emotional or not emotional enough. Whatever the case may be, it can leave a lasting mark on your emotional well-being. Toxic mothers can cause more than just emotional pain. In fact, struggling to express your emotions can lead to a whole host of mental health issues, including depression. But don't worry, we've got your back. In our next video, we'll be taking a deep dive into how depression really feels.